I wanted to share something with you and the audience. A really good friend of mine who lives right up the street from me here in Tampa Bay area is a retired Navy SEAL captain named John Doolittle. And he and I were talking about courage and fear as we were getting into this. And you think in a 30-year career like John has had, where he has served all over the world, he is the only SEAL who's ever done the English Channel, swimming that all alone. You can imagine all these things. And he said, people think when they look at SEALs or they look at people who are out there, they equate fear to physical challenges. And he said, that's where so many people get it wrong. He said, when you look at me, the thing I was most fearful of as I was going through my career was actually speaking. It was getting in front of a group and talking to people. And he said that what you really have to do is focus on mindset. And that comes not through these physical challenges, it comes through everyday challenges and living to your values and living to the fullest energy force that you can have. And I found so much of what he was saying resonated with so much that you have in the book.
Thanks. First of all, I love that story. It absolutely resonates. And in the book, I share dozens of stories of everyday people who have done things, just one small act that ended up changing their lives. But I'll tell you one quick story of mine. When I was 9 years old, my idol was my older cousin, Stephen. And an event rocked our entire family. He was crossing the street locally here, and I live in Cleveland, Ohio. He was going to build a tree house with friends, and a car came up over a hill, and he was killed. And it affected me very deeply, especially about crossing streets. I just became maniacal about the safety in crossing streets. I now have my own children. And one day, after implementing all of my courage practices, doing one thing every day that scares me, as I began to do for years and years, I had a bunch of young kids over for dinner, as I always did every weekend. And I heard a scream outside my front door, and I ran outside to find that one of my daughter's 7th grade friends had been hit by an SUV crossing our street. It was that thing you never wish will ever happen. And all I can tell you is I sprinted barefoot out my front door, down my street and into the main street where she was laying. And I stood over her body with my arms outstretched because traffic was coming in both directions. And I said to myself, this is not going to happen again. And I cannot tell you what it meant to have a courage practice in that moment, because I knew that whatever it took, I wasn't going to move. And I stood over Sophie's body, waited, held off traffic until the ambulance came, got the other kids into the house, went to the hospital. I had to call her parents and tell her parents what nobody wants to tell another parent, that their child was hurt while they were on your watch. They came to the hospital and gave me a huge hug. And I'm happy to report that Sophie is a vibrant college sophomore now and is completely healed. But that moment was my clarion call to courage. And it was only, I believe, that I had years of practice of stepping into my own courageous power that it allowed me to stand over her with my arms outstretched and making sure that it wasn't going to happen again.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that very powerful story. And as a parent myself and a dog owner, that is one of the biggest fears I think a parent has, is a kid losing sense for a moment, going and chasing a ball and not thinking about what's behind them and running out in the street, or the same thing with your pet. But what a courageous act that was.